Hello, my name is Lindsay Phillipson, and I'm a consultant with Partners for Impact. Today, I will be giving an overview of some secondary data analysis research that we have conducted as part of the Western North Carolina Youth Homelessness Partnership. Um, the Western North Carolina Youth Homelessness Partnership is a HUD or Housing and Urban Development funded youth homeless systems improvement grant, sometimes referred to as YHSI or YESI. Partners for Impact has been working with HealthNet Gaston on this project to implement a community response framework that ensures young people experiencing homelessness have equitable access to homeless services and housing options. As you can see here, these are the 20 counties that are included in this project, not including those that are highlighted blue. So this includes balance of state regions 1, 2, and 3 in North Carolina, 509, Gaston, Lincoln, Cleveland, Continuum of Care, COC. For those unfamiliar, COCs are community-wide coordinated efforts to end homelessness by prioritizing and combining funding efforts among a range of housing and services for individuals and families experiencing homelessness. So first, we wanted to look at how communities are counting or tracking youth that are experiencing homelessness. We're looking at ages 16, young adults or youth that are ages 16 through 24. So there are many different types of definitions of homelessness, doubling up versus unsheltered, for example, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a few slides. So really it depends on how communities, how different organizations count homelessness, obviously, while communities through HUD must track the ages of those experiencing homelessness, they don't often provide public reports of homelessness experienced by youth in this age group. So how a COC decides to report out their homeless numbers can really greatly impact how a community responds or perceives homelessness. Also, many youth do not consider themselves homeless, as we've found, even when they're living in a non-traditional housing like a car or they're staying with a friend. There's also limited shelter access for unaccompanied youth, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So first, we looked at point in time data, sometimes referred to as PIT data by COCs and by county. A PIT count is an annual survey conducted by Continuums of Care that provide a snapshot of the number of people experiencing homelessness at a specific time. This is typically conducted on a single night in January. It's important to note that HUD defines those that are experiencing homelessness as individuals whose primary nighttime residence is a space not meant for human habitation. So this would be a vehicle or a tent or just sleeping outside. Individuals living in an emergency shelter as well, or have temporary accommodations through an organization such as a hotel to get them temporary housing. So here's an overview of the point in time count data that we found in 2024. First, it's important to note that youth data is organized into two age groups, so we don't necessarily have a breakdown of 16 through 18. We have youth 18 and under, under 18, so 17 and under, and 18 to 24. So we found that 135 youth were experiencing homelessness 18 through 24 across all 20 counties. Other regions that we looked at included Buncombe County, where we found 38, and Northwest COC 15. We found 108 unaccompanied youth under 25 across all 20 counties. Now, unaccompanied youth are youth under the age of 24 who are not in the physical custody of a parent or guardian. So again, this is not necessarily broken down 18 to 24. Top regions included 22 youth in Catawba County, 14 in Henderson, and 34 in Gaston, Lincoln, Cleveland counties. So that's all three, Gaston, Lincoln, Cleveland. So that report was by their COC. So we don't have a breakdown of counties there. Other regions include Buncombe County, we saw 31, and then Northwest COC 20. We also looked at parenting youth, so youth under the age of 25 who were parenting. We saw 29 across all 20 counties. Other regions included Buncombe County 3 and 2 in Northwest COC. When we did report these numbers out to our partners, they were surprised and suspect that there are more than 29 parents, young parents that are experiencing homelessness across these counties. But this is the data that we have through point in time. We also saw 17 and under, a total of 238 youth experiencing homelessness across 20 counties. 83 in Gaston, Lake, and Cleveland, 47 in Buncombe, and 68 in Northwest COC. So we also wanted to look at McKinney-Vento data, as this provides a different definition of homelessness. It's important to note that this is looking at student homeless population, so it's only data for 18 and under students who are enrolled in school. The McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act is a federal law that ensures homeless children and youth have access to education and related services. School districts are required to have a designated McKinney-Vento liaison who helps identify and support homeless students and ensures that they have access to their rights and services. Part of the role of the liaison is to track how many students are experiencing homelessness and to publicly publish the number of students that are experiencing homelessness, often on the school's website. The act defines homelessness as children and youth who lack fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. So this does include those who are sharing housing with a friend, or couch surfing is another term for it, and doubling up is how McKinney-Vento refers to it. It also does include those who are living in temporary shelters, hotels, public spaces, and unaccompanied youth. So when we looked at the data in North Carolina, we saw that over 37,000 students were experiencing homelessness statewide. Within the 20 counties that we were looking at, the numbers ranged from 17 to 722 students per district. Counties with the highest homeless student population were Rutherford, Henderson, Cleveland, McDowell, and Gaston. And again, this includes all ages in the school district, so it's not broken down into age groups. 16 through 18 would be the numbers that the ages that we were looking at, but we could not get those numbers. You'll see on the right here, these are the different regions of students experiencing homelessness. The project, our 20 counties are located in Northwest, Western, and Southwest regions. So historically, the percentage of homeless students living in a particular type of housing remains relatively stable, with students who are doubled up composing approximately 71% of all students experiencing homelessness. So we know that while the majority of students that are counted as homeless within the school systems, these students would not be considered homeless by HUD definition. So when you see point in time count, it's just important to note that those numbers do not include these students. So McKinney-Vento counts students who are doubling up or couch surfing. So we also wanted to look into what kinds of housing resources are available to this age group in this region. Continuums of care, in addition to their point in time counts, also conduct an annual housing inventory count. So this is a one-day count of all shelter, transitional housing, and permanent housing resources available, and that's exclusively for people who are experiencing homelessness. So for all of North Carolina balance of state, and this includes, but is not limited to, the 20 counties in our project. This is all balance of state regions throughout North Carolina. There were only 34 beds available to youth. And as a definition, youth beds are designated for unaccompanied young adults or youth-headed households between the ages of 18 and 24. There were 11 child-only beds, meaning those child-only beds are designated for unaccompanied children under the age of 18 that are not a part of a household with an adult or youth 18 and up. And then there were over 3,000 adult-only beds and over 3,000 family beds. And family beds are beds within units designated to that are designated for families with children, at least one adult and one child under 18. And those adult-only beds are for single adults 18 and up, or couples that do not have children. So in Gaston, Lincoln, Cleveland, surprisingly, we saw 78 youth beds, so they have more than all North Carolina balance of state regions combined. 56 child-only beds, again, more than the other balance of state regions. And then 164 adult-only and 140 family beds. So we think it would be worth looking into how Gaston, Lincoln, Cleveland manages their youth beds and child-only beds. So we also wanted to look into the economic and educational environment for youth, and especially youth who are experiencing homelessness. One way that you can do this is by looking at Opportunity Youth. And you can find this information on My Future NC. So Opportunity Youth are young people ages 16 through 24 who are neither enrolled in school nor actively participating in the labor market. We saw that statewide, 10.9% of youth are neither enrolled in school or participating in the labor market. Across 20 counties that we're looking into, that ranges from 5.3% to 18.2%. So all but 4 counties have a higher than statewide rate. So counties with the highest rate include Burke, McDowell, Alexander, Caldwell, Polk, Rutherford, and Cleveland counties. We also wanted to look at the educational performance of students who are experiencing homelessness, and this you can find on NC reports. So the graduation rate, and just to note, this does utilize the McKinney-Vento definition, so it does include those youth who are doubling up. The graduation rate across 20 counties among the general student population was 88.3%. And the graduation rate across those 20 counties among students experiencing homelessness was 72.8%, so quite a difference there. Graduation rate among homeless students across school districts ranged from 52.6% in Catawba County to 90% in Burke County. So here is a just a visual map showing kind of what those differences are. You'll see that Catawba County had the largest difference between homeless students and the general student population of their graduation rates. And then interestingly enough, in Burke County, homeless students actually graduated at a slightly higher rate than average students. So that was something we thought was worth noting and maybe worth looking into, the support systems that might be in place for those students. And then we looked into reading performance. This is measured by students' performance on the standardized test known as the NC Standard Course for Study for English Language Arts, which is an end of grade test in grades 3rd through 8th. So 3 through 8. It does not go into high school, just to note. So students who are experiencing homelessness test lower on average than the general student population. On average, 50.37% of all students are not proficient in reading, whereas 69.1% of students experiencing homelessness are not proficient. So Lincoln County has the highest difference in reading scores. 81% of students experiencing homelessness are not proficient, whereas 46% of the general student population are not proficient. So that's a 35.3% difference. And then another interesting thing we saw was in Gaston County, students that are experiencing homelessness actually scored slightly higher than the general student population. So 56.5% of all Gaston County students are not proficient, and 54.3% of those experiencing homelessness are not proficient. So we think that's, again, worth looking into, seeing what kind of resources might be available to those students in that county. And here you can kind of see that visual. So Lincoln County, Henderson County, and Transylvania versus Gaston and Graham and Swain. So a little bit different there. We also wanted to look into what kinds of services, organizations, youth spaces are available for youth in the West. Our initial search showed that there was limited programming for youth at county and city parks and recreations and libraries. There were a lot of specific age programs that were readily available for 12 and under. There's a lot of national and statewide programs like 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten, Eco Explore, but we really didn't find much widely funded programs for high school age or young adult age. There were also more senior centers than teen centers, just less public spaces available for that age group. 4 counties didn't have any listed parks and recreation programs available for this age group. Most parks and rec programs for youth were sports leagues, cheerleading, basketball, football, etc. Public libraries, again, many of them had more programs available for that 12 and under age group. 6 counties did not have any listed library programs for 16 through 24, but we did see some library programs for youth that included card game clubs, Dungeons and Dragons, book clubs, and some teen spaces available. Every county had a 4-H program, has a 4-H program available for youth up to 18. LGBTQ plus organizations were limited. We did find that 4 counties had an LGBTQ plus related organization or community space. Many of those organizations spanned several counties. But as far as community spaces available for this group, there was limited spaces available. 6 counties had youth councils or youth boards that provide some kind of direction or feedback at the community level. That was we saw that through local government or organizations such as United Way. Every county has a juvenile crime prevention council, but we did not find any of them mentioning youth serving on these councils or providing, any feedback or being actively involved in its operations or decision-making processes. Every county was at least under the umbrella of a workforce development board that worked specifically with youth. So we found the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act does ensure that youth are included in workforce development programs, but we found that many of those programs spanned several counties. So not every county had a specific place to go in person or necessarily like a one contact that they could reach. We also looked into community health assessments because they're really one of the most consistent community-wide assessments. It provides a systematic process that evaluates the health status, needs, and resources of a community. Each health assessment identifies 3 top public health priorities and that help guide resource allocation and community-wide efforts. We found that 3 counties mentioned data concerns that were specific to youth. Transylvania and Gaston counties mentioned teen and young adult mental health. Cleveland County mentioned lowering teen birth rate. Two counties identified safe and affordable housing as a top health priority in their assessments, and that was Macon and Henderson counties. And then five counties mentioned point in time data specifically. That was Transylvania, Henderson, Haywood, Gaston, and Catawba. So in conclusion, we really found that there was limited or inconsistent data on housing insecurity experienced by youth and young adults. The way that we count and report this data to the public really impacts and can guide how we react as a community to this issue or how we perceive how many youth in this age group are experiencing homelessness. There also appears to be limited resources for this age group. As we saw, there were less emergency housing available, less shelters space available. There's also not as many community-wide programs available to this age group. There's also less community-wide awareness or focus on this age group. Youth are more disconnected from the workforce in this region, as we've seen with the Opportunity Youth data. Youth experiencing homelessness are also struggling in schools. There's a couple of counties that homeless students or students experiencing homelessness were performing at least as well as their counterparts or a little bit better. So we think that it's really worth looking into those school districts and counties. So I think that's everything. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope this was a valuable resource.